It's recording.
Cool, and so, like I said before, I'll let everybody know, technical issues on my side. I don't really see when we record, but this is the NWC Show, episode 45, and if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Gash Williams, also known as the Rad Lad.
Man, thanks for taking the time to come out your day and be on the show and chat wrestling with me.
No problem, I love wrestling.
So, first question we always kick these off with is the one that you've probably asked 1,000 times, is what got you into wrestling? What was that moment you were like, these guys wearing pants is what I want to
do? When I was I was very little before I even got into wrestling. Like, at a young age, I wasn't into all that contact sports like football and basketball until I was at a caravan holiday with my nan and my sisters and our pal and our grandson. It wasn't Craig Tara, that's all I know. It was somewhere else. I remember seeing a ring. It looked like a boxing ring. I honestly thought it was boxing at the time, but boxing and wrestling are different sports. I went to a wrestling event and I seen people getting battled, and that's where I saw the UK Dominator, and he was a face at the time, Barton, the bad guys.
Yeah.
I was laughing. To be honest, I was actually in stitches laughing just seeing that happen. I was not very cheering and boo at the time. All I did is just laugh at people getting battled.
Yeah.
And then I started going into the wrestling a wee bit until moving forward into 2008, just the night before Night of Champions on SmackDown. I was watching a tag team match between Kane, the Big Show, against MVP and Mark Henry at the time. I seen MVP getting battered a lot and hear him screaming, and then I wasn't scared or anything. I was just laughing too hard until my uncle noticed that I'm not actually scared or anything. I'm just finding this funny.
Yeah.
And then until I watched a couple of more WWE shows, I started getting into it even more. And
yeah. I think everybody's got that kind of similar story as well. Like, they see it and they're like, what the hell is this? Is this like boxing or like what is this weird thing?
And then I started loving wrestling ever since, because my uncle is a big wrestling fan, and then he also sent me a couple of old wrestling DVDs, like histories of wrestling events and matches, like compilations and all that stuff. And I also got me a couple of wrestling figures and wrestling belts and magazines at the time, so I'm very thankful that he actually got me all this stuff.
Yeah, so kind of just from there, it's just kind of been something that you've been just into the whole time, yeah. And what got you to make that steps to kind of start towards like wrestling training? What kind of got you? Is it just like the love of it? You were like, you know what, I think I could probably get into doing this.
At the time, I keep telling my parents that I want to be a wrestler so much because I actually love the wrestling. And to be honest, I was like, I didn't know they would let me in because I was very young at the time, until a year, like when I was turning 15 or 14 at the time. I honestly want to be a wrestler so much. My mum and dad wouldn't let me because I had school and all that stuff. I don't want to miss school due to wrestling events and all that stuff. And then when I was turning 17, when I was turning 18 at the time, my mum and dad trust me enough to. I told them. Well, before that, I actually told them when I was at a Comic-Con event. I noticed that ICW was there because they had an ICW event on that day, like for 2 nights. That's when I started falling in love with wrestling even more, and started watching some of their stuff on YouTube, and I've also been watching a couple of wrestling shows on YouTube and wherever I can find, like Progress, WCPW, which turned into Defiant Wrestling, and I watched some highlight clips for New Japan, like that got me into wrestling even more.
Yeah, for me, I was the same. When I first started wrestling training, I was like 12, and it was like in the middle of nowhere. So it was, if you know where Linwood is, which is like a wee bit away from Glasgow, and it's like there's nothing much there. But that was back in 2003, 4-ish when I started wrestling training. So I was like 12 when I first started. Yeah, it was such a, like you said, it was. I didn't tell my parents I was doing it, so my mum was like, "You better not be like want to do wrestling training." I think the first time she was okay for me going, then she was like, "Right, I need you to stop that before you get into too much of it." But I said I had like a weekend job at a shop, and I would just go and wrestle, like go train and stuff like that, instead of from going. Obviously, I didn't have a job, so I just went and trained. And she used to always be like, "Oh, why are you always like injured and stuff? Are you coming back, you're sore and stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just picking up boxes and shit. It's really hard."
My mum and dad were alright with me joining the wrestling school, but the only thing they were concerned is like me. They're just worried in case I get hurt from it. I mean, one time when I was on Christmas Eve, like I was still. This is like my first year in the training, like in PBW. I usually get a haircut on Christmas Eve, and my mum noticed a big chalk mark across my chest because I had a training match, and she was not happy. She was gonna come up to the wrestling school one day to pull up the person that shot me for that, and I basically told her straight, "It's part of wrestling. It's part of wrestling. You're supposed to get chopped." And my dad,
that would have been so embarrassing for yourself if like your mum turned up.
Aye. If it was my dad, he would not do this to embarrass me. He would just embarrass himself just trying to start a fight.
No man, it would have been. I could have just imagined you just being like, "Oh Jesus, I'm going to need to find another school in like a different country or something," because this would have been like just too embarrassing to come back to. But I know my mum didn't find out till I was like 3 years deep into actual wrestling. Like she found out when like, one of my friends came and he slipped up by mistake, and we were just like, "Oh shit, didn't mean it." But, I kept it a really good secret, like a long sleeve t-shirts and like covering myself up, which I was like, no, I'm not going to let on like I'm doing this, but it was something that I wanted to do so bad, and then I got injured, which everybody in this podcast knows that I broke my neck, so I had to kind of leave it for a while. Leave it. I've never went back, but talking to you guys has really got me itching to get back to doing something. I'm really looking at doing like try to do like manager stuff or some stuff like that, so I'm not going to have to be there like all the time, but I can do some fun stuff too. So hopefully when COVID's away, I'll be able to get something going. So talking about COVID, man, how have you felt dealing with it? Obviously missing out in training and all that kind of stuff. Has it been weird not having that there?
I mean, when I found out about COVID, like I just thought it was just I don't want to say something bad, but I just thought it was just rumours about it until March. We were told that we all had to get locked in, like because of COVID, and then we also we told that we won't be going to training or be getting booked on shows because of the COVID pandemic. I mean, to me, I actually was kind of gutted, but I kind of knew it was going to happen sooner rather than later, honestly. At that point on, I'm still keeping myself occupied. Like, I'm still have faith on hoping this pandemic would end and we'll get back to what we love doing and all that stuff. And I'm also still in contact with all my friends and making sure
I think
that
that's the most important thing as well, is like staying in touch with people. For me, I'm dreading so I turned 29. So I was 28 when it started. I turned 29, which my birthday's in June. And this year I'm turning 30, which I'm like, I better not spend another fucking birthday sitting in like a lockdown or something. I'm like, I need to be able to get out.
we all need to. It's too
Which
much.
is I sound like a dog. I just need to go for a walk or something. Like somebody just take me somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I'm just going for walks and all that stuff and just listening to music just to clear my mind and just for not bother with the pandemic, honestly. Just stay relaxed and stay chill. That's what I would do.
Definitely, man. Recently I've been doing these weird like challenges. So like I the start of this month for my May challenge, I walked like 46 miles. This weekend, the weekend after, I'm going to be doing a challenge when it's like 25 miles a day, but I need to camp somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So it's like literally in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. I need to go camp, which is it's going to be fun. But doing that kind of shit, like getting away from like your phone and all that kind of stuff, is really, really fun, and it helps dealing with obviously how shit the pandemic is, like because you're kind of stuck doing nothing the majority of the time, and good thing is for me, I created this channel because of the pandemic, so my work kind of closed down. So I created this channel which helps me stay active and watch ton of wrestling. Do you keep up with today's product, or is it just something that you just kind of watch every now and again?
I mean, I still watch, but even though the pandemic's still going on, I still watch them trying to do what they're trying to do, honestly. I mean, I still find it weird seeing no fans.
Yeah,
in a wrestling show. They're just basically just watching it like virtually or like in WWE, but you got Impact that has no crowds, but they use like sound, like audience sound, like from the audience, and you got AEW that has actual fans, like social distancing. Obviously, that's the most important thing we need to do in life. It's like trying to stay healthy and avoid getting the virus. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make things better for the audience and the fans and the staffs, and of course.
Yeah, but so with kind of today's kind of wrestling product, what's something? So we always ask this question as well because I love hearing people's different opinions on it. What's something that you love, that you really like about today's wrestling product? For me personally, it would be how much there is. There's like a wrestling show for everybody, and there's so much to watch. Like it's impossible for you to sit and watch every single wrestling show that's out there on a weekly basis. But what's your favourite thing about wrestling today?
It's hard to explain because I've loved the wrestling for years, like for so long. Honestly, it's like I wasn't that big a fan back then until my uncle got me into it, and I've been a big fan ever since. And I even got some of my pals into it, and they're also big wrestling fans as well. And even my mum and dad used to be big fans, but they just love it because they know their son is doing the wrestling, and they just want to be proud of their son just doing something great, or better yet, not just their son but their kids that are doing something successful. I think that's it, honestly. Like, it's really hard to explain because it's really hard, honestly.
I know, man. I get what you're saying. Like it's just like you like it because you like it. There's no really like a explanation to it.
Aye. But for people that don't like it, understand. I don't. It doesn't bother me because I have friends that likes the wrestling that doesn't. But even though you're not a big wrestling fan, you can always still come to show some support to like or even just enjoy the show like with your friends or family that are big wrestling fans. Honestly, even though it might not be for you, but it can be for someone else. Honestly.
Definitely, man. There's something for everybody at a wrestling show. Like especially like independent stuff. There is literally something for everybody, from like the kid who walks in to the 18 plus adult who wants to see like that chair pits and stuff like that. There's something for everybody, which makes it fun and cool. But talking about, obviously we are doing like positives there. But what's something that you dislike about today's wrestling world? For me personally, it has to be the kind of the Twitter stuff. I feel that people are a little bit too harsh on wrestlers. It's not really their fault that if they're in a bad storyline, it is creative. You can't really be like, oh, this person's terrible because they're getting told to throw tomatoes at somebody. Like it's not their fault they're doing that, but it's my Twitter sometimes I feel is a little bit too harsh. What's something that you dislike about wrestling today?
Don't really know. I think the one thing that I wasn't a big fan of is the whole. Hold on, give me a notification. Sorry. I think what I don't like. It's like the only thing I dislike is it's like the booking, like it's like, for example, when the hold on, I had an idea. I did have something in my head, but it's just gone. I think to me, like, I wasn't a big fan, like people once, for example, I'm a big EC3 fan when he came back, right? And then when he came to the main roster, which it was quite early for him, honestly. When he had that match with Dean Ambrose, like on the first night he made his appearance, and when he won the match, Vince was not really that pleased, and he decided to just give up on him, like along with other wrestlers, like he has like since they made the main roster debut. But I honestly hope it's really hard to think about what I dislike about the product, honestly.
No, man, I get what you're saying. Like people come up and then like they just don't get. I don't know. They seem really cool when they're in NXT. So, for instance, me just knew Rhea Ripley is one of my favourite wrestlers. I think she's great. Definitely. And when she came up to the main roster, even though she's the women's champion at the minute, it doesn't feel like she's the women's champion. For some reason, it just kind of it just feels like she's holding the belt till Charlotte takes it, and that hurts a wee bit because I'm like, she's such a good worker. Nobody really believes in her.
Aye. I mean, I like Charlotte Flair, but you have to remember, she needs. We all want someone else to go for a title shot rather than Charlotte, because we've seen Charlotte going after titles constantly. But it's not really Charlotte's fault. It's just what their creative ideas that I come up with those.
And that's what I was saying as well. Like, there's no really like. It's just like you can't blame like the wrestler because
it's just the ideas that is the fault, not the wrestler's fault.
I like they've set it up that way. Like there's no other way to get out of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, which is such a pain for like. Charlotte Flair's a great wrestler. Like she's probably the top, if not in the top 5 women wrestlers of all time, which is great to see. Same goes for Rhea Ripley. You would think they would have great storytelling with each other, but they just don't. It just seems to keep failing, and I think it's just they don't know what to do. Like they don't know how to try and build other stars without hurting other ones anymore because they've got so used to looking at just as, okay, here's our top 2 people and we're just going to keep trying to get them to win as many belts as possible. And it just doesn't work, especially in this day and age, especially somebody like Rhea Ripley or, I don't know, you go through the Shayna Baszler, they'll look cool and they genuinely beat the shit out of somebody, but you just don't believe it. For Shayna Baszler, it's even worse because you're like, what are they even doing with her? Like they're got on a tag team that doesn't even work for her. And then I've got her on TikTok dancing. which is another thing that's a small gripe for me, is I prefer if wrestlers kept like kayfabe on social media as well. Like I don't need to see the Fiend posting pictures of his dog, you know what I mean? But that's one thing that really gets me. Man, so in 10 years' time, I'm not asking you to predict the future, but just where would you like to be? Would you like see yourself in NXT UK or over in Japan, ROH? Where would your ideal position be in that 10-year period?
That's hard. I always think to myself, like, I would still probably be booked on like shows in Scotland, but I would like to be booked on like outside. I would like to be booked on shows like outside of Scotland and outside the UK before I even get booked on. Before I even get booked on big companies like Impact, WWE, AEW, and Ring of Honor, or New Japan. I would do what I would want, like other wrestlers would do, like just get booked on more shows and make a name for yourself, and wait for something to happen. Honestly,
definitely. I mean, I think there's so much talent in Scotland just now as well.
Aye.
So you've got like a ton of matches that you can have, and ICW being on the network, which helps it get more eyes on it from America, is good for the Scottish guys being able to get out there and do some more work and stuff like that as well, because those guys are picking it up in Peacock, and so I think there's a ton of stuff that's going on in wrestling at the minute.
Yeah, totally.
Plus the wrestling talent in Scotland's just
amazing.
Like it's the amount of guys that I've had on this podcast, like yourself as well, and then people go and check them out and they're like, didn't even know this person existed, and I've had a binge of their YouTube matches. Do you know what I mean? which is it's good to see. I like to help smaller guys, like guys that are not smaller guys that are doing it that haven't really been like known everywhere else, and especially I get guys that watch this from like America, Canada, Australia, and they get to experience kind of. But I don't know why they watch it, because when two Scottish people are talking, they probably don't understand what we're saying. But man, so who would you say is your favourite wrestler of all time? If you had to pick one person and be like, this is my favourite, who would you say yours is?
I would have to say Johnny Gargano. The reason why I picked him, right, it's not because of his NXT take. Well, it's kind of that, obviously, but I'm a big fan of his NXT takeover attires because I'm a geek myself, honestly. I think the one match that I mostly enjoyed, it has to be the one we had with Tommaso Ciampa in New Orleans. One of my favourite matches. I liked all his Tommaso Ciampa matches and his Adam Cole matches and the match he had with Finn Balor. But I would have to say that Tommaso Ciampa in New Orleans has to be my favourite one. It's because
you're the first person to pick Johnny Gargano, but I know what you mean. Like I love Tommaso Ciampa. He's one of my top guys in NXT at the minute. But like Gargano's always good to watch. Like he's a pleasure just to sit down and enjoy his matches. I don't think there's, off the top of my head, I can't think of a bad match. And did you see him against Bronson Reed in the cage match?
Oh, I definitely enjoyed that. I didn't mind him losing the title, but I honestly enjoyed the match, obviously.
Yeah, the match was great, and I think him losing the title is good because it gets maybe up to that main event kind of title picture again, doing something up there. But he's a fantastic worker, and that's I don't want to see him go to the main roster. I just want him to stay in NXT the way he is.
I think we all want him to stay in NXT because he's done so good in NXT. Like he has good matches with Andrade, Ciampa, Black, Adam and Balor, and Keith Lee. I mean, he's like Finn Balor, Sami Zayn, and Shinsuke of NXT.
And if you think about the amount of guys that have went up from NXT, just as we're talking about it, like you just said there, you've got like the Shinsuke was in there. You had Damian Priest is the one that keeps coming to my head just now. Like they're way up there, and it just feels like they don't even like they've just like here's a zombie match, and we don't know what we're going to do with you after this, which it hurts to see.
I know.
And you're like in NXT, they're so good. Like they put them over so well that they need to go to the main roster. just to be ruined, which is so annoying. It's like, why Adam Cole? I know there's talks about him going up to the main roster, and I'm like, please don't. Just please stay in NXT, because I don't want to start to have to you.
Adam Cole is amazing as well, honestly.
So Johnny Gargano's a cool one, man, because a lot of people always pick like the older guy. Like, so for me, my favourite wrestler of all time has to be Sting, because when I was a kid, he was the first wrestler that I really remember getting into. But getting older, it would be like Bret Hart, then you've got like Raven. It's so hard to pick one, but like Gargano's like a really unusual one, because nobody really picks an NXT person.
I mean, I've honestly liked all the wrestlers we grown up, honestly. I mean, it doesn't hurt the feelings if you like someone from NXT, honestly.
It's so hard to like pick one, but see when you start like, oh, I like this guy, and then before you know it, you're like, and then here's the other 20 people in wrestling that I like. Would you see NXT as your kind of go-to show for your wrestling fix at the minute, or is it just whatever you can get on like YouTube and stuff like that?
I honestly would love to be on NXT, but I would honestly, it'll be like Pete. It's like how Pete Dunne does it. Like, he just usually be on NXT and then jumps into the UK brand and then jumps back into it. I feel like it would probably be that.
And event-wise, man, what's your favourite event of all time? For me, it always has to be that Royal Rumble, just because everybody I know, like, sit down and watch it. So, like, my kids, my fiance, they all love watching the Royal Rumble with me. And it always has good feelings. But favourite event, if I was to say one, is King of the Ring 99, because I remember getting a VHS tape with it and putting that in and just watching it for about a year and a half straight. Like, it was ruined by the end of it, but I know everything that happens on it, and it's not even a great pay-per-view, it's just, I love it. What's your favourite kind of event? That can be just anything, it could be an independent show or whatever. What's your favourite one?
I got 3 actually.
That's cool, man. 5 minutes.
The one was in WWE, right? It's with CM Punk versus John Cena and Money in the Bank for the WWE title. I mean, it's like, after watching CM Punk do that pipe bomb, like, it was brutal. Like, you've never seen someone doing that, like, apart from Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
We all thought he was going to be the next Stone Cold because of that. And it in Chicago when Cena was getting booed, it kind of reminded me of the ECW One Night Stand show he had with Rob Van Dam. It was kind of like that. And my second favourite event was Kurt Angle versus Mr. Anderson and Jeff Hardy for the TNA World Champion at Bound for Glory 2010. Good. It was a good match because it's been. I can't remember what happened. I know Jeff turned heel at the time. I can't remember what happened in that and all that stuff. I know he just turned heel, just hitting Anderson and Kurt with the crutches and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my third one would have to be Cody Rhodes versus his brother Dustin. I know it's not main event, but it's still a good match because we've been wanting to see the two of them go at it. Whether it's in WWE, TNA, or any other wrestling promotions, they would do it. And I mean, I didn't mind the blood, honestly. I just didn't expect that to happen. And after hearing the chants, like, for Dusty and all that stuff, it was actually honestly good hearing them chanting. And then after watching Cody's promo about wanting his older brother back, it actually nearly put me in tears, actually.
Man, that was an emotional match as well, because I love blood in wrestling. Like, it's got a good place in it, and when it's used to tell a story, it works amazing. But obviously, there's WWE who don't do it anymore, which it hurts wrestling a little bit, I think, personally.
It sometimes happens, like, sorry to interrupt you, it sometimes happens, like, you just don't expect it to happen. The only thing that bothers me with WWE, like, when it comes to blood, they just have to stop the match and just get cleaned up.
I know. I just, like, one of my favourite matches ever is the Eddie Guerrero JBL, the same John Cena JBL, the ones when they burst open covered in blood and are just telling, like, an insane story. Like, I love that. It's just like a great match, great wrestling, but they're, like, lacerated. You're like, how is this guy still going? Like, Shawn Michaels is always one that is like, you're like, how is so much blood coming out of this guy? Ric Flair is another one. But it's cool to see, and it tells a story, especially if it's the one like if it means something. But man, that Cody and Dustin match was it was up there for being the top match that I've had. Like, I really like it. So coming up for the end of the podcast, man, there's one question that we never send anybody, and it's because I like to hear people hum and haw about it, to be honest with you. So what I do is I'll ask you the question. I'll tell you my answer, and then so I normally have two answers to it. So you can as many answers as you want, because we'll probably end up in a tangent talking about it. But the question is, if you could replace somebody or add yourself to any match in history, what would it be? So for my first one, I always say is SummerSlam '94, Blue Steel Cage, Bret Hart, Owen Hart. I would replace Owen Hart if I was as good as Owen Hart, because that's my favourite steel cage match and one of my favourite wrestling matches of all time. The second one for me is Kurt Angle versus Undertaker, No Way Out 2006. I would be the referee just to be able to experience how cool that match is. What would your one be, man, if you could replace somebody in a match with yourself? Obviously, you could be the referee or whatever.
I think one person I would replace would be, and would have to be a manager. Ric Flair. I would replace Ric Flair. I put myself as the manager. Against just to watch Triple H and Booker T. Because that was my favorite WrestleMania match ever. Yeah, it was like my favorite match. Even I was kind of gutted at the time when Booker didn't win, obviously. But I would love to see that happen in person. Just do the things Ric Flair would do, like when he was a manager in the heel.
And that's a very, like, that match is something that a lot of people don't really speak about. That's WrestleMania 19, isn't it? A lot of people don't speak about that one. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just Triple H trying to bury Booker T in it. But
because he was in WCW at the time.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good match, and I was gutted that Booker T genuinely didn't win. I was actually gutted back then. But on that card, the match, obviously that card was insane because you had Austin doing his last match that nobody knew about. You had Angle Brock Lesnar, and then you had Hogan and McMahon, which randomly was really good. That shouldn't have been good, but it was.
I think the Brock Lesnar one was scary because of that shooting star press he did. It was because of his weight and how big he is. It actually, when I was watching, because my uncle, I was still getting into wrestling. I was still getting into better wrestling at the time. It's when my uncle was talking about Brock Lesnar a lot, and he showed me these clips of him. Like, I never heard of him. Like, the only clips he showed me is the one where he did the infamous suplex to Big Show in the ring, just collapsed. And he also showed me a clip where he did a shooting star and nearly hurt himself. And I actually thought that was the scariest moment in my life, just seeing that.
And the Big Show, the ring collapsing kind of thing, that is one of my favourite SmackDown moments ever. Because I remember, where was I? I was in a hotel and I was watching it on like Sky One. They'd done the highlights of it.
The Vault.
I was watching. I can't even remember, but I was watching it and I jam put the chair like I was sitting. In a hotel, you've got the bed and you get that one chair just randomly. So I just jam put the chair and was like, "What the hell? This is insane!" But I just remember popping for that, and it's such a cool moment. But that WrestleMania 19 is because WrestleMania 18 was good. 17 is probably one of the best of all time. You've got 18, definitely, which was good. 19, which was good. 20, which is good. You get a whole bunch in a row that was really good, and then for some reason it just falls off. And I think it's just they just didn't, like we were saying earlier, they didn't set up enough talent to kind of take over, because it felt like they had no old guys, but they had all these guys in their prime, like 30 to 40 prime, knowing what they're doing in wrestling, and then there was just like these young guys that were still trying to find their feet and find where their character was going, and it felt like everybody just left in the same gear. Like there was nobody else left from like that kind of WCW early 2000 WWE time, and it was these younger guys who didn't really know, and I think that's what hurt wrestling in the long run.
I get what you mean.
But man, that was a really fun. And nobody's ever picked a manager. Everybody always picks to be in the match. So I want a manager's a different one. Plus, replacing somebody as iconic as Ric Flair, would it only be as if you were as cool as Ric Flair on the outside, or would you add your own stuff to
it? I would try to do some of the stuff he actually does when he's a manager. Just when he's a heel, when he's a manager as a heel, he always does something funny. I would try and do something like that, just to get a pop out of that.
Man, a funny story is my gran hated Ric Flair, like with a passion. Like I don't know why she just hated him with a passion. And I remember I asked her, I was at school and I asked her to go get the Ric Flair DVD that came out. So it was just coming out, and I was like, "Could you go down and get it for me?" And I saved up my pocket money to get it, and I gave her it, and she was like, "No, I'm not touching a DVD with his face on it." And I was like, "Why do you hate him so much?" And I never knew. I seen him live one time when I went to the WWE live show that came here to Glasgow, and he was like the manager for Charlotte. But I was like, I don't understand why you why you hated him. I don't get it. But recently I had a chance to speak to Ric Flair privately, and I said that story. It was him and his wife. I said that story, and they just burst into stitches. And I still to this day. So unfortunately, my granny passed away last year. But still to this day, I have no clue. No, man, it's fine. She was really old, but still to this day, I have no clue why she hated him, which is so annoying. Just leaving me in a cliffhanger, waiting to find out why you hated this guy. And I thought if I says it to like Ric Flair and his wife himself, they would have been able to enlighten me. But no, they didn't have a clue either. She just hated him. That good of a heel that she hated him.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
Like, it's been cool talking to you.
It's been good talking to you as well, man.
I wanted to reach out to you because obviously I like to help people in the kind of Scottish wrestling scene.
Aye.
I've been trying to watch everybody's kind of stuff happening here. But where would you like people to go check you first? Is it on Twitter, Instagram, or is there anything on YouTube that has been uploaded that you would like somebody to go check you out?
I've got Twitter. I sometimes post some videos on my Twitter, Instagram. It's just clips of some of the matches I've been involved in, and sometimes I just put in wrestling content. Sometimes I just put it up outside wrestling content. Sometimes I also just requote tweets or just retweet stuff on Twitter. And all that stuff. My social media stuff are this is the same as the name, like Gash Williams at Gash Williams PW. That's that.
I mean, I've been watching this stuff on Instagram. When I've been in the toilet, that's what I've been doing. When I've been going through like looking at new other wrestling stuff, that boring time when you're sitting there in the toilet. But I was trying to come up with something that I was doing that would sound like interesting. I could have just said I was sitting in the living room.
No, that's all right.
Probably made more sense instead of grassing myself in about the toilet.
Don't worry, I do that stuff as well, and don't just get bored, just look through my phone and all that stuff.
Man, sometimes I sit in there. I've got kids, man, so I sit in there as long as I can, not to listen to them, just for like that wee 10-minute period when they don't ask me a question about like why hedgehogs have spikes and stuff. I'm like, I don't know, they just do. But man, like I say, thanks for being on. What I'll do is I'll end the podcast here. The links for your socials are in the description below, so everybody can go check you out, go follow you, support you when shows and stuff come back, and give you the information about when we're going to upload it and stuff after this.
All right, thanks anyway, man.